Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Music Theory Mondays, the place where we dissect music theory on a level that hopefully everybody can understand. Today we're going to be looking at the song My Ship, jazz standard, and it's a ballad. It's in the key of F. All right, we're going to just take a look at the first line. Couple things I want to run through here within this first line. Just establishing the root with the, helps to turn it on, with the F6 at the beginning. There's your one chord, all right? Then we're going to go through a series of dominant chords. Now, if you guys aren't aware about dominant chords, please go back into this Music Theory Mondays playlist. Look up the videos on the dominant chords and also the secondary dominant chords. But I'll try to explain this as briefly as possible here. We have one dominant chord per key, but in this particular line, we have three dominant chords. So two of them are acting as secondary dominant chords. We have the D7 to the G7 to the C7 and then back to the F. So what's going on here is that we're playing the F6 is the one chord, all right, and then we're going to throw in the D7, which is the secondary dominant. That is going to resolve itself to the G7, which is also a secondary dominant, because neither of those are in the key of F. And then we're going to resolve that G7 to the C7, which is, in fact, the dominant chord of the key of F. So you establish the key of F with the F6. You have two related but unrelated dominant chords, secondary dominant chords. The D7 resolves to the G, and then the G resolves to the C7, and then, of course, the C7 is the 5 of F. So now we've brought it back home. Now, what's the point of throwing in those dominant chords? Well, it allows the song to temporarily leave the key in a very powerful way, because the dominant chord lends, or rather requires, resolution, right? So as soon as you play that D7, your ear is like, where's this going? It has to resolve. So it resolves temporarily to the G7, and then the G7 resolves to the C7, and then we finally resolve this string of dominant chords back to the one chord in F, okay? From there, we're going to go to what's called the F sharp diminished 7, all right? Now, this chord is acting as a segue between the F6 and the G7 that follows. All right, so if we were to play these all together, you're going to get all right, so you get a little stepping stone kind of motion between the F6 and the G7. That F sharp diminished 7 acts as that stepping stone, all right? Very unique chord, doesn't always sound good on its own, but in the right context, it works very well. After the F sharp diminished 7, we then have a G7. Again, it's the resolution point for the F sharp diminished 7. And then it's followed by another C7, which is the 5 in the original key of F, which is what we're going to end this lesson on, the F, the one chord. So in closing, the two things I wanted to point out here were the use of secondary dominant chords to create movement and suspense, allowing for a more interesting chord progression. And then also the infusion of that F sharp diminished 7 as a stepping stone between the F6 and the G7. So these are two very common concepts that you can use in your writing, especially if you're dealing in jazz. So if anybody has any questions, comments, likes, subscribes, thanks for watching.